Happy Community Manager Appreciation Day 2016. We're celebrating the 7th year of Community Manager Appreciation Day. 7 years ago, Jeremiah O. Wang tweeted out, hey, I think we should start a day called Community Manager Appreciation Day. And we should do it on the 4th Monday of every January. And we have as a community ever since. This is the 4th year we're doing live broadcasts and panels really each hour. For an entire day, 24 hours, with the communities all around the world. And it's the 3rd year we've celebrated each other by nominating each other and doing community manager awards. It's really exciting this year. We have a little over 300 nominees, and so things are just growing, and we're really excited about that. My name is Brew. I'm the Director of Awesome with Be the Change Revolutions and co-producer of My Community Manager. And really happy to be here celebrating this day. It's one of my favorite days of the year.
Hey everybody, I'm Sherry Rohde, and I'm the Community Manager at Magento, as well as co-producing JR Hangout.
Hey guys, I'm Barack. I'm the founder of Amplify Your Biz and the Community Manager for Meshfire.
Hey everybody, I'm Dom. I am Project Manager and Community Manager for BTC Revolutions, as well as co-host with Sherry and Brew for My Community Manager. And I want to take a quick second before we really kick off this panel just to thank all of our sponsors. You guys really help make this entire thing and the awards something special like it is. So wanted to give a shout out to you guys, Salesforce, Community Cloud, Higher Logic, Online Community Results, Sprout Social, Vanilla Forums, Nerf, CommunityManagement.org, SocialMedia.org, Amplify Yourself, Igloo Intranet, and Meshfire. Thank you so much for all of your help, and make sure that after this wonderful panel, you do tune in to the very beginning of the panel next hour, because we will be giving away our very first 2016 CMAD Award.
Excellent. So we are on hour 10 of 24 hours. This panel is using the art of storytelling to connect brands to audiences and communities. And Christy, we're just hand things over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for that great introduction and for all of your support. You guys are doing a fantastic job. Keep up the good work. Only, I think, 14 hours for you left. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for dialing in today. This is really exciting, Community Manager Appreciation Day. You know, it's about us, for us, by us, and with us. And it's a great idea that we get to share in some expert analysis and insight from the people doing the job and some people who maybe aren't doing the job but can provide some deeper insight into what is going on out in the greater world that can impact community management. So my name is Christie Fedora, and I run my own community management consultancy company called The Perfect Circle, and I live in London, where I've resided for the past 16 years, but I am Virginian by the grace of God, as we like to say back home. And I'm pretty excited to be accepted as a panel presenter for Community Manager Appreciation Day, because I feel quite strongly about the topic of storytelling, and having been a former marketing manager and understanding how important those stories are, I thought how interesting it is that we now have the ability to grab stories and from the community and pull them out and maybe identify them for marketing campaigns. But is that necessarily the right thing to do? And does that happen as often as it should? So these are some questions that I wanted to get into, and I've assembled a great panel to help me discuss this today. But specifically with storytelling, it's quite interesting because it's an ancient part of our genetic makeup. It engages us, it brings us closer together, and it helps us understand one another. But more specifically, it also strengthens loyalty and tightens ties, which makes perfect sense now with the advent of social media, that storytelling is experiencing a huge boom in popularity. And I know that many of us have seen brands telling stories well, and we've probably seen brands maybe not telling them very well or ignoring the concept altogether. And the old model used to be that of the customer reference story. So you would publish it once, and then you'd run a few marketing campaigns off the back of it, and then shelve it. But this isn't any longer the case, probably because of social media. Concepts like evergreen content and content marketing have also gained in popularity because brands are finally beginning to understand that create once and publish once is no longer an option to keep them viable in the marketplace. So for today's panel, I've assembled some experts whom are, in my opinion, people who really understand the importance of telling a story and why it matters. You will see that one of our distinguished panelists is not a community manager, and like I said, this is because I wanted to explore the idea that stories not only come from the community, but should be shared and gathered across the organization. So our panel today is going to chat about why you should tell a story, how you should tell a story, and who is telling really great stories, which is going to be a fantastic conversation to have. So first, I'd like to start with an introduction of all of our panelists. So Alex, would you tell the world who you are?
Sure. I am Alex Shivar. I'm the Community Director for Yelp in London, and I've been a Community Manager and Community Director for the last 5.5 years, so way too long. But good. It's been fun. Yeah, that's me.
Jim?
Hi, Christie. So my name is Jim Haysom. I'm the UK Sales Director of an Australian business called Rocked. We do referral marketing. I've spent my entire career helping brands tell stories through the power of the digital world.
And Matt?
Hi there, my name is Matt Hope. I'm a lead community manager for a social media agency called Immediate Future. I've been a community manager for the past 6 or 7 years across brands such as Levi's UK, Motorola, and for a global music startup, So Far Sounds.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So for our first question, I want to talk about kind of more of a concept instead of a specific question. So the concept is, do you think in words or in pictures? Because there's a lot of argument that infographics have saved the day. So for example, HubSpot and Infogram recently had a report called Start Generating Leads with Infographics. And in that report, they said that an infographic is up to 30 times more likely to be read than an article. But my question is, do pictures and infographics really resonate with an audience? And if it's true, how specifically does that impact the old traditional lead generation model where you would provide a teaser in some shape or form to the audience and get them to click on a link and come to a landing page and give away their precious email address, which is their currency. They're paying you with their email address. So in order to access the deeper content or the bigger story. But if we're now using social media and we're now also using infographics, is someone really going to give you their whole email address to download an infographic or click on it? In other words, how is lead generation being impacted by this sort of shorter form of content? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Alex, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can definitely start. It's interesting if you said, do you think in words or in pictures? And when I've been thinking about this, I've come to this conclusion that I think in words, but I read in pictures, which is a very sort of new concept, specifically for me who was trained in journalism. But the truth is that when I see an email and it's all text, my mind just goes blank. It's too long, didn't read, and that's just a constant. There's just so much information out there. But if it's a really good image with concise, interesting information, that's when it stays in my mind, and that's when I start thinking about it and playing with it and actually doing something with it. So it doesn't surprise me at all that infographics are becoming more and more popular because they're quick, they're punchy, they're visual, and they stay with you. And I think they are sort of the future, that sort of combination of words and visuals in the best possible way.
Excellent. Jim, what have you got?
Yeah, I think I'm similar to Alex, actually. I think we've all become so focused on how content has become part of our lives, and the thumb scroll through our phones, through Twitter, through Facebook, and through Google Plus. The image is the hook. Is the image that stands out. And if you can create content that resonates with consumers and is relevant and timely, then you're going to start to engage an audience. Too often you find that if it's just too much text and too much content, just in a B2B world and a B2C world, it's time to just word blindage and time to move on.
I like that word blinded. Yeah, I do. My personal problem is that I am a very wordy, verbose person, as all of you and everyone listening to this podcast will already know. And so I think in words, and I also, sort of communicate that way. I try to describe something to someone, but I use a lot of words instead of coming up with a singular image that might encapsulate that thought better. So it's really interesting to hear how each of us do it. How about you, Matt? Which do you think, in words or pictures?
I agree. I think I like to explain myself in a lot of metaphors rather than words or pictures or just factual information. So I think the more we illustrate large amounts of complex information for the audiences out there, and the more that we get used to consuming data in a very illustrated or designed way, the more people will take to infographics or visualize data and just basically illustrated communication in a lot faster ways and engage a lot further with it.
So Matt, let me delve a little bit deeper into this with you specifically, because you work at an agency, and so you're surrounded by creatives all the time, and creatives who specifically are creating content for campaigns. Do you find that most clients are asking more for content that is graphical rather than sort of text-based, or does it just vary client to client?
It varies client to client. It also varies between audiences, between different types of target audiences as well, and how you divide different attention spans across different audience requirements. So if you're requiring your target audience to submit an email address, then you should be giving them a lot more for that. But if you're just requiring them to read just a simple bit of information about your brand or campaign, then you can get them to do a lot less for that.
I liked how you mentioned, or it sort of twigged with me, maybe the type of client that it is as well. So, Jim, you worked for an automotive, or in the automotive industry for a long time. I'm just wondering, obviously the sexy car image, those adverts of cars careening around tight corners, those are very powerful images. But, there's still the idea of you get a lot of documentation when you buy a car, right? How does that work?
Yeah, you certainly do. Gone are the days of going to the showroom and speaking to a person across a table and being shown around a car and then taking home a 60-page brochure to then thumb through and get excited about. I think content now has become so synonymous with inspiration and discovery and a lot of emotion. And most brands these days, is certainly in the automotive world, and even it can go across many verticals, they need to inspire people, they need to create a connection with people, and they need to find something that resonates. And in an automotive world, a good example is that the creative, the flashy cars, the videos, the nice animations, they're hooks. It's a hook to start disrupting the consumer. And once you've got that consumer disrupted and you have their attention, it's around nurturing that customer through the customer journey.
Christie, you mentioned instruction manuals, and that's a really interesting point, because let's bring up an instruction manual that I think probably everybody has read, which is an IKEA manual. And despite the fact that I read no manuals at all, that one I've gone through step by step, story by story to create something. It is not the best story in the world, but all visual. Anybody can get through it, and you actually complete a project at the end where I could not build a damn bookshelf if my life depended on it, but I can build an IKEA bookshelf because it is so visual. I think that that's the way all instruction manuals are going to go from now on.
Well, that is a topic we cannot delve into now, Alex, because I used to work in the documentation industry, and we could spend days and days and days discussing that. I will tell you that I was very honored at a conference in my past life to see the two top technical writers from IKEA give a presentation, and they were brilliant. And one of the things that IKEA actually requires of all of their suppliers, of which there are thousands, is that you have to be able, they have to deliver their product with graphical instruction. If they don't, they cannot be a supplier for IKEA. So that's just a little footnote of interest there for everybody, because I'm that boring. In our previous chats, guys, I think one of you talked about specifically the motivation, which Matt has just mentioned here as well, and I think that's quite interesting, because does it matter what type of content you're trying to, or you're publishing, based, or is there an impact directly related to the type of content you're trying to publish for the type of motivation you're trying to generate, right? So, for example, is the motivation to create awareness, or is it to educate, or is it to get them to do something? So does that have a bearing on what type of content you produce, graphical versus written?
I think it's about the value of the content that you're providing to someone that determines how much they're willing to part with, or in terms do, to access the information. If you're giving your community some information that's really valuable, really helpful, it's going to help them, it's going to enable them to do the things they want to do within your community or related to your product. It's just a matter of distance after that, whether you put that behind a single-click email collection form, or you put it through a series of, like Alex was talking about, like a step-by-step guide how to get that information. It's just a matter of distance after that, and that can determine, that can affect the motivation for being able to get that information directly.
Agreed. The more involved your community is, the more they're going to be willing to give you. So if you do need to do more complicated things, you can send them a little more text. But for that first involvement with the community, I don't care what you're doing. It has to be light. It has to be visual. It has to be no more than about one action. Because if you try to do any more than that, you're going to lose people right off the bat. So I think, I don't care what you're marketing to in that first email, completely visual. That would be the only way to go, I think, at this point.
I think it also comes to the point what Alex was saying around the IKEA brochure. In terms of storytelling, it has a start, a middle, and an end. And if you don't know what the end game is, and you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then you can't create this beginning of the story. And in similar ways to short-form content, long-form content, any immersive content you want a consumer to do, you've got to know what your goals are.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's move on to data. So this is a completely fascinating subject to me, because obviously marketers rely on their data. They need to know who their audiences are. They try and segment them as much as possible. I mean, there are entire data houses that have grown up just to buy and sell data, which they then segment to a specific type of audience. And Facebook is doing this now. The more information you give Facebook, the more powerful Facebook becomes for marketeers. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying there's a lot of information out there that's data related. So the more that you kind of look at this data, the more that you want to share it. But you need to build a story around the data, because nobody wants to read a statistic necessarily any longer. You want to have that statistic placed firmly within the context of a story. I think that's kind of what my feeling is. But there was a recent Social Media Week panel that was hosted by Loyal IS, based out of New York. They're great. I really like them over there. Sarah is fantastic. And the panelists on that panel stated that both analytics and creative are needed to create great content, and that data can be creative. And they were emphasizing specifically that data is informing creative, and that data can be creative. So it's not really coming as an afterthought, in other words. But my question is, in today's savvy customer world, won't consumers just see through that? Like, how can you position the research that you've done that you think is really going to be beneficial to end consumers to see, without coming across as just sounding false, or just kind of playing it up? Any thoughts on that?
I think if you present the creative that you've made from specific sets of data, or insight that you've developed from that data, and if you're transparent with that with your target audience, then in some respects they can it can enhance the respect that they give you for using that data, because you're a lot more relevant than you would be without the data, or you can be a lot more useful than you would be if you hadn't have used that data properly. But there is a fine line between using data in a way that's quite creepy and using data in a way that still maintains the trust of your audiences.
Yeah, I don't think they'll see you as false by using data. I just think they'll find you boring. I mean, data is great in the right sort of capacity, but when you just sort of throw it at people, again, it's the same thing with too many words. People just kind of zone out. They're not quite sure why you're throwing this data at them, what the point is. What you have to do with it is actually relate to them. You have data that you think they'd be interested in, prove it. Find examples, find people who are affected by this data, and actually tell stories that relate on a human interest, not just a number interest. It's what journalists do every day. They get stories and data and numbers, and then they actually find a way to attract, put it together in a package that attracts a local audience that people actually care about. Community management, same thing. Find ways to connect with your community using this data that is interesting to them.
Jim, I know you've got a couple of stories, don't you? Are you gonna tell us a couple of your stories about data?
About data. Oh, lots of data. 86% of the people also recommend the shampoo that I wear, but that I use. So I think when you look at data, the panel have already said that without some context and some relevance to it, it's just numbers. And people need to be emotionally bought into why a brand or why a service is trying to help them, and understand the value exchange that brings. People spend far too much time on the internet and far too much time on social and also on their mobile, which is also an opportunity. It shouldn't be dismissed as a bad thing. So I think when you look at data and you look at how brands are using it, there's plenty of analytics tools out there. Lots of social signals, lots of social analytics, and it's a case of extrapolating that information in a meaningful way and then curating stories around the pockets of insights that you can get and identifying the key audience groups that are going to be able to resonate and amplify that story.
Lovely. Okay, great. So I want to talk a little bit about customer success stories, because the big question is, are they what they used to be? And if not, what's replaced them and how? Because again, we're looking at getting across the impact or the impactfulness of a great story in a tweet, right? 140 characters is all you've got. Facebook gives you a little bit more leeway, but again, then you get into the too long didn't read mentality. You can store that kind of stuff behind your firewall for lead generation purposes, but who's really going to click through it? Are e-seminars what they all used to be? Do people sign up for these things and hear about how a customer really had a great success by utilizing your product, or are we doing more thought leadership now? I'm kind of bringing in here the marketing angle, the lead generation angle, because I think it's incredibly important, because none of us are in business if we don't have customers coming through the door and purchasing our products. But at the same time, I'm very mindful of the fact that we need to be talking about community here. And we have some really great customer success stories that would, of course, come from within the community. So how can we kind of look at sharing great successes in today's social media world?
It has to connect. I mean, take a look at Lyft, which is a really good example. Lyft, obviously, the ride-sharing company that's probably the most famous one next to Uber, and they have a very big challenge because they're not as big as Uber and they don't have as many cars and there are a whole bunch of things. But they ran a campaign called Why I Lyft, so you can do hashtag Why I Lyft, and it was unbelievable. It was beautiful and stunning, and the stories were really true, and it was just something that made you connect with not just like, oh, I'm just taking a car ride from X to Y, but who these people are and who these people, who take these rides are. And it made me go, maybe it's more than just a ride. Maybe it actually is like a whole community of people who are doing this and why they do it. And I was really moved in a way that I never thought I'd be moved by a ride-sharing company. And that's exactly the point, that you can take these things that people kind of take for granted and twist them in a way that goes, hey, here's the human element behind it. This is why it's really important to you as a person. And if you can make that connection, you'll win every single time.
I believe that customer stories should be inherent in not only the brand story but the community story as well. Some of the better examples I've seen, the company that I used to work for, So Far Sounds, they basically put their positive stories at the front and center of basically everything they did. So it was basically about the journey of new bands and their success rates. So they covered not only their geographical touring from different house gig to house gig across the globe, but also their career and their progression through the network of the So Far Sounds community. Everything from signings, new performances, and then pivotal moments about how they interacted in and out of the global community and eventually got to success through the support of the So Far Sounds community. And that message is always played back to the community to instill the trust and integrity in the brand and what their final mission statement is.
I was going to add, in terms of where community really get involved and really get excited, is when they feel part of that story. And one good or two good examples come to mind recently. One is Fisherman's Friend, the lozenges, which if you're over the age of 35, knocking on 40 or 50, you might be a hardcore fan like I was when I was a child. Taste absolutely horrible, but it does what it says on the tin. And they engaged on Twitter and on YouTube a really interactive storyboard where you became part of the story, and you used some clever gadgetry, and they got your timeline and they took your profile photo and they actually put you into the story. And what's surprising is it's actually driven 1900 videos, and this was a Twitter campaign that actually started sometime like November time last year, and even this week people are still discovering Fisherman's Friend and these videos. Which is a good example in terms of being part of that story. And another good example is Cadbury's Cream Eggs had done a cream egg bake. I think the hashtag was #creameggbake. And this is where they actually engaged the Google Plus community in their own hangout, where they created content from consumers where they had been baking with Cadbury's Cream Eggs. And they ended up getting a really famous chef called Eric Lanlard, who took those recipes, who then created a Hangout on Air video. They had 7 million pieces of content shared, like tens of thousands of engagements, and those people who took part would have felt empowered that it took them one step further on that journey and that relationship with Cadbury's.
They're also launching a pop-up cafe here in London, and people lost their mind when it was announced. So there's definitely a community interaction going on with Cadbury.
Excellent. Thank you for telling us that, Alex. We will expect details to be forthcoming from you about how to access that.
I wanted tickets and did not get. They were gone like that. We'll see if I can.
See if you can hook us up.
Yeah, right.
So, Matt, when we were talking about this question before the event, you said something so interesting. You said that picking and choosing your stories carefully and sending them out can also help proof your audience's definition. So do you want to talk a little bit more about picking the right story for the right type of audience?
Yeah, so basically it depends on situation and what like what Jim was saying earlier, what makes the audience tick. It's a matter of having like a story hunting approach from every department. So especially the community manager role, who can play into brand marketing and customer service and all the different departments that they can influence. And having that story hunting ethos, being able to identify patterns of narrative as they start happening, and that can depend on the data insight that you can have, or how you've seen patterns evolve and stories emerge from your communities previously, and then tying that back into how the brands perceive themselves, not only through the eyes of the community, but how the community can perceive that story too. There's different aspects of play. It's just a matter of relevance, playing the right stories back to the people it's going to resonate with.
I think we've all had bad experiences with your phone not working, your internet not working, the life not working. And from a community point of view, any brand owner or a comms team, PR team need to be reactive and actually feel that they're empowered, but also take ownership to resolve those problems and get that out in the open. So yes, we accept your problem, we're going to solve it, resolve it, but actually deeper beyond the negativity that can sometimes be found around social. There is heaps and heaps and heaps of amazing stories that consumers have experienced, and rather than having this siloed approach within a business where, oh no, that's just the marketing team, or oh no, that's just the social team, there needs to be an open forum, and as Matt says, the story and the social hunting within the business, and having the receptionist on the front desk right through to the cleaners, to the mechanics, to the people who are writing the board, feel that they all have an equal voice to bring up some of those goodness within their business.
That I feel exactly the same, Jim, and actually you brought us beautifully onto our next question, because I wanted to talk a little bit about that very thing. So there was an ebook published recently by Falcon Social, and it was called How to Create a Social Content Strategy for Your Business. And in that particular document, they wrote that social media runs on storytelling, and the most telling content may not reach the marketing, PR, or social media departments or headquarters. So specifically, they mentioned that these are customer-facing roles, such as store personnel, technicians, and other people in the trenches. In other words, your ambassadors. So what can companies do to ensure that that silo doesn't happen, that a story, specifically if we look at community, so we all know that community is just a wonderful, great repository of fantastic community stories. That's maybe not so true when a person is just kind of entering the sales funnel. Maybe they're just a prospect. They don't have a story with you yet. They don't have a relationship with you yet. But how can we pull stories from across the organization? Does there need to be a centralized department of content? I mean, who would own such a thing, right? Would that be under marketing? Would it be under PR? Would it be under technology? Because stories need to impact not only lead acquisition or customer acquisition process, but also the ongoing process of having that customer, so product improvement. So maybe the customer sales or the customer support rep, he's hearing stories that are telling him that something is fundamentally wrong with the product. So those stories need to be fed back up. There was recently a case where, it was Hootsuite who published this fantastic blog post, and I'll try and find it and share the link later, where they said that their new interface that they created, everybody hated it, and because everybody hated it, it gave them a lot of information to change it and change it successfully, and they worked with their customers on that. And apologies if it wasn't Hootsuite, I might have mix the name up. But in any case, that's the kind of stories that I like to see coming out, because it tells me something fundamental about that particular customer, about that particular company, that they're willing to listen and they're willing to change. So I'm just wondering, where within the organization should those stories go to? Who should own them? And what can we do to make sure that these silos don't happen, that the person on the shop floor hears something fantastic and it never goes anyplace else?
Okay, I can do it. Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question, and I think the answer is everywhere. You want those stories to be heard, they have to start at the top. There has to be policies in place that these, not only place an ability to share these stories, but also guarantee that people are actually listening. Because if you tell these great stories and nobody cares and they don't do anything, then you're never going to share it again. If you share one and it never goes anywhere and nothing ever happens, it's not ever going to do it. But if you do share this story and it gets featured and promoted, not only is your community better, but you as an employee feel better as well. I mean, we at Yelp have this community of people who are constantly adding reviews every minute of the day, and we're always trying to figure out new ways to not only share their content, but also share who these people are. Because they're great, amazing stories of doctors and lawyers and dentists and people who just really love talking about a city that they live in and the travels they've gone to. And yes, their content is amazing, and it is, but they're amazing, and we want to make sure that's featured. So you have to find a way that people get a chance to shine, or else why bother, and no one will.
So Alex, specifically with your role, obviously you're looking after a humongous community, right? And like you say, you've got thousands and thousands of stories being published on a daily basis as reviews.
Yeah.
Are you expecting that the review content is being carefully scrutinized by each sort of company that's being reviewed, and that they're utilizing those stories to constantly improve their process? Or is it something that you sort of get involved in?
They damn well better be. And that's not me talking about for the company, it's for their own good. I mean, sometimes if I read a review and it's really amazing or like really, really terrible, I will send it to the business being like, hey guys, you know, this person wrote this thing, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's definitely worth taking a look at. But overall, if they are checking every review, not just on Yelp, but overall everywhere, then they're already losing. I mean, they have to be aware that people are talking about them, getting the word out there. I'll get business owners who are upset that they're put on Yelp, and they're like, you know, I don't want to be on Yelp. Like, the fact that they're not on Yelp means that people are going to magically stop talking about them. Like, because they've gotten bad reviews on Yelp that nobody else is saying the same things elsewhere. It's such a naive, like, terrible opinion to have, where instead of actually focusing on maybe there's a problem, they're just like, we'll ignore it. It'll all go away. It won't, and you'll fail. So yes, every business owner should be claiming their Yelp page, should be looking at all the reviews, should be on social media, making sure that they're part of the conversation, not just like pretending it's not happening. They need to.
I think everyone has the power to influence all those people around them, but also within their wider social networks. So even if it is one individual that's had a bad experience, don't dismiss it as being, oh, that doesn't seem very important, because that one particular person it really was, and you need to act upon that. I've seen a really good example, I think it was about 1.5 years ago, where it was on Twitter, a young lad had vocally said on Twitter, wow, that looks an awesome car. It was a Nissan GTR, and it was in an automotive showroom. Now that actual dealer group, which was Perry's Motors, had actually identified that they'd mentioned it was Perry's Motors, had actually worked out where that showroom was, phoned up the showroom, then took a photo, then took a piece of paper with the guy's handle name, his Twitter handle written on it, and stuck it on the number plate, then took a photo and then tweeted back to the guy saying, really pleased you like our Nissan GTR, it's got your name written all over it. Now, that individual piece of moment took maybe, I expect, half an hour. Were they going to sell a Nissan GTR to this lad? Most likely not, but they had an ongoing conversation, and it's maybe it's a case of building really good content rather than lots and lots of content really badly. There's an open question for you.
Oh, that brings up another interesting point, and Matt, I'm not ignoring you. I want to hear what you have to say as well. But I want to talk about sort of the social listening aspect. So, Alex, you know, your platform, for example, allows those, you know, well, you hope that your businesses are responding and checking things out and kind of on the platform all the time. Jim, you're talking about sort of social listening and tapping in and just sort of diving in a little bit and then coming back out and understanding, you know, kind of taking a look at what's happening out there and responding to things on an as-needed basis, which you can expand upon. And Matt, I'm sure some of your clients are doing social listening as well, so that idea that marketing managers used to run?
Sorry, I missed a little bit of that.
Yeah, Christie.
Oh, sorry. So do you guys think that social listening is starting to replace the traditional marketing campaign where you run a campaign every quarter and it's, you know, you do your broadcasting but you don't do social listening, or you try and mix the two together?
I believe there's a different mix of social listening and campaign-to-campaign movement for a lot of different companies. It depends on the initial product offering or service that the brand has. Something I was going to comment on was the value of internal story sharing from the ground up on things, especially like examples of customer service on social media. It can definitely feed up from incentivizing just the first responders to know that they can make a big difference if they're looking for specific opportunities across channels to fix the problems or make a resolution with a customer and keep that customer. But at the same time, if they're feeding the whole story of that journey from start to end to their seniors and above, that can internally affect a lot of the brand strategies and company-wide strategies as well. If the senior marketing teams and even management teams are getting their eyes on these kinds of narratives.
That's really interesting. I like how you said that it can impact a whole brand strategy. You know, the power of listening to these stories. So, you know, if we take someone like Alex, who, you know, his maybe there's 3 bad reviews for a particular local pizza shop, and they have a look at those, and then suddenly they, you know, the guys sit down on a Sunday afternoon and say, look, we've got to address this. We've got to change things. That is one variation or one variety of changing a brand strategy. But if you're talking about a company like, let's say, IBM or Cisco or you know, Salesforce, is that really something that you think you can see happening out in the marketplace?
I mean, look at Google. Google will release things all the time and be really excited about it. Google Wave, Google Buzz, and then it just doesn't work, and they will scrap it and take another thing. I think it's not as quick as just like changing your recipe, but yeah, I think it definitely happens.
Excellent. Okay. So the social to fuel PR, and I think that's what you've just mentioned here. I really, like I said, I really like what you have to say here. I think that from, you know, you're in such an interesting environment, being in a kind of an agency working with a number of different brands, that you're able to identify trends that maybe the rest of us can't see happening or really have thought about. But I like how you talked about also different platforms allowing for different types of conversations to occur. So, for example, on Facebook, I've seen, and maybe you guys have had this experience as well, where you know, a friend of mine on Facebook has posted something on a company's Facebook page, and I see that in my timeline. I maybe have nothing to do with that brand, or I've never heard of that brand, but you know, my father-in-law posted on his favorite barbecue tools company about how much he loved his new thermometer or whatever, and I thought, oh well, you know, that must be a pretty good thermometer. I'm not in the market for a barbecue thermometer, but should I be in the future, I know now where to get one. So I think it goes back to what Jim was saying as well, is that, you know, story sharing is all around us. It's not just within the context of a particular social media platform. It's pulling them from everywhere and sharing them in lots of places, because, you know, I could run into Jim on the street and we might start talking about barbecue tools, but it might be pretty random, right? Let's not do that, Jim. Let's not do that. So, and that's also why I think that the power of reviews, Alex, from your perspective, is so important, because, you know, in that case, my father-in-law is giving a positive review for a company I have no interaction with, but I'm able to see that, which is kind of strange, but nice all at the same time. Conversely, of course, we can see the negatives that are posted on those pages, right? My father-in-law didn't like the tool. Maybe then I would think that's not the company for me to eventually go to should I need a tool. So I think that, you know, the stories are out there. Maybe they're not within the traditional model of the old customer reference story, but I think we've all kind of agreed that we need to gather them from around the company. We need to share them internally. The company needs to use them for product improvement or for marketing purposes, for PR purposes, for brand strategy, for marketing strategy. These are all really important things, and all of them are about coming from specifically either prospects who don't yet know you, or people who already know you really well, and they have the most important opinion of all, right? So this is great stuff. So the team had told me earlier that we should be wrapping up about 10 minutes till, so we've got about 7 minutes, and I hope you've all done your homework for me. Thank you. And I asked each of you to give me an example of a company using great storytelling which ties prospects and audiences and communities to their brand, whether it's data specific, or not data specific. So I'd love to hear what examples you've come up with. Alex, do you want to go first?
Sure. I was giving this a lot of thought, and I was thinking about the stories that actually affected me. And I mentioned the Lyft story, which I really liked. But another one that was maybe, I don't know, a year or 2 years ago at this point, it was this video that popped up, and it was this song about dumb ways to die. And it was really cute, animated, and it was really fun. And then you got to the end, and you realized it was a PSA for the Melbourne trains about not dying in train deaths, which is a really weird way to go, because it was so cute and animated and a really grisly subject, but it has stayed with me forever. And I think what was beautiful about it is that I didn't even see it being an ad or a PSA. It was just such fun, shareable content that then twisted into a message that I've remembered till today. And I thought that was brilliant. Like, absolutely one of the most brilliant things, and it won all kinds of awards, as it should. But that was such a cool way to tell a story that, in a completely, in a way that you've seen over and over and over again of PSAs about, like, what not to do, but in a completely new way. I loved that.
Excellent. Jim, do you have one for us?
Yeah, it's a Danish travel company called Spacey Travel, and a Danish friend of mine on Facebook had obviously commented and posted this 3-minute video. It had a beautiful lady on it, and it caught my eye. That goes back to the imagery again, and I thought I'd give it a go. I might as well play it. And surprisingly, this travel company were educating people that the birth rate is actually on a decline in Denmark. And what this travel company were trying to do was to encourage people to come to do it for mum and to actually go on holiday and procreate. And they were willing to actually provide some discounts and some baby competition prizes and so on to just literally try and sort it out. You know, grandparents need grandkids. It's not going to happen by itself.
Wow, I don't think any of us were expecting that. That's fantastic. Love it. Okay. Doing it for Denmark. Matt, do you have anything that might be more interesting? Sorry, Matt, do you have a story?
I really liked Alex's example. That was one of my favourites from quite a while ago as well. I was totally addicted to that Dumb Ways to Die game, trying to avoid dying on the train in Melbourne. Usually a go-to example for a brand that's really mastering storytelling across multiple channels on social is Apple Music for me. They do really well with backstage exclusives on Snapchat, influencer-led hosting, and really high quality content using different channels for the best of the formats that they use on that channel. But a lot smaller brand that I wanted to mention was a British pub chain called Green King. Now last year what they did was they focused, they really drilled down on the fact that their network of pubs was all about the people within them. So they decided to give their pub regulars their own cameras, a little bit about what was going on in their lives at the time. As they go in and out of the pubs, there's different stories that come out from landlords and landladies getting married, sports teams, darts and football teams, winning champions, making losses, and anything from people going on dates to fancy dress pub crawls. But when they tie it together in a really nice video and play that back to the community, it's very heartwarming and it's very genuine, and it definitely played on my heartstrings. So I just thought that was a very very simple but effective thing for a network of pubs to do.
Oh, that's lovely. I like that one, Matt. Thank you. That was nice. Okay, guys. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your insights today, and we'll be tweeting out some of the campaigns that you've mentioned. I'll be using the hashtag of storytelling under CMAD, so I hope everybody can pick those up there. And you guys were brilliant. I really enjoyed all of this. Alex, thank you for dialing in for Dublin. I know you have a lot of work on today, and I appreciate it. Jim, you know, you've always got a story. That's my middle name for you now, Jim. I've always got a story, Haysom. And Matt, you brought such great insight and depth because you have such a wealth of knowledge from all of your clients. So thank all of you very, very much. This was really interesting, and I learned a lot, and I hope everybody else did. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Christie.
Thanks, Christie. It was great.
Yeah, and a big thanks to you as well, Christie, for putting everybody together and getting this done. Always great to hear these stories and to go through panels like this. So thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. Like she was saying, make sure you guys are paying attention to following them on Twitter and keeping the conversation going. And make sure you tune back in 10 minutes. Because at the top of that panel, we are actually going to be giving away our very first 2016 CMAT award. So we'll see you guys then.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.